And we're live, Jeff. And
Yay!
I say Jeff because tonight's drink and draw is just two guys drinking and drawing.
It's old
Um,
school.
it's real old school. We're still working on our Eternals covers, um, and we're going to be doing a little bit of that. Some of our guys are busy. Dave is struggling with internet problems.
A couple of technical difficulties, apparently.
Yeah, he's got some issues. Joe has a fireman's outfit on. He's pretending he's Ash from his acclaimed comic book from the 90s. He's putting
I
out
feel
a
like he does
kitchen fire.
that a lot.
Yeah. Do you remember that one? Ash.
I like that. You know what other comic Joe did that I really like was Ninjak. You remember that?
Ninjak. Oh, yeah.
Good stuff.
I was a big fan. Ooh, maybe I should have that internet on the other TV. Lights me nicely.
There you go.
There we go.
You know, the lighting I like the best is definitely night light. Like I have a little Smurf light night. It's like a calming blue.
Smurf night light.
A little Smurf night light.
Wow. That's nice.
Yeah.
What are you drinking there, Jeff? Is it?
I am drinking a glass of delicious mezcal that you sent me for my birthday.
Yeah, it took only 3 weeks to arrive. Cheers. I'm going to pour, I have some Japanese whiskey.
Nice.
It's delicious. It's super smooth.
Oh, yeah, this mezcal is top notch.
Can't open it, though. That's one of the problems. Hold on.
Sometimes you have to fight your whiskey.
Sometimes, yeah. Looks like I got it open, so that's a success. Oh, yeah.
I had faith in you.
Yeah, I've done this before. All right. So, Jeff, this is kind of big news.
Yeah.
Before we got on air, sometimes we jibber jabber a little bit, kind of. And you mentioned you had yet another idea for an Eternals cover.
Well, I mean, the simple truth is that I only had the one idea that we talked about, which everyone has seen.
And everybody loves Jeff.
Apparently everyone loves it. But then Dave started giving me a hard time. That's the initial rough. It's the second rough. There we go.
I like that one.
Yeah, so that one I'm still working on. I am going to make some compositional changes to it. I'm going to make him smaller because he's supposed to be a kid. And I'm going to move everyone up a little bit so that there is more danger and threat at the bottom. And I'll be doing that tonight. I'll be playing with that while we're chit-chatting.
But you had another one.
I did have another idea. Dave was appalled that I only had one sketch. So I decided to come up with a different sketch. And then what popped in my head was one of the female characters dressed with a traditional Egyptian garb and lightning shooting out of her eyes. I thought that might make a cool cover. Good. But you were so angry at me for moving away from the sprite sketch that I think I had to put it on the back burner.
Huh. Yeah. I mean, maybe we should ask some of our loyal viewers here.
Should I have another option just in case
some of the guys at Marvel? I mean, they already okayed that sketch. They liked it. The sprite.
Sure, but I felt bad that maybe I bullied them into it. So I want to give someone a choice.
You don't want to bully people. I
don't like bullying people.
No.
Yeah.
It's not your style.
It's not my jam.
Well, I mean, you gotta draw what makes you happy. I personally think Sprite battling the forces of evil in a Turkish bath.
I mean, it's a winner.
Sure. Cover. I think it's going to sell copies. I think it's going to get people to the comic book shop.
I do think it's something that they haven't seen before. That's for sure.
People have never seen Sprite in that way before. That's true.
I mean, Sprite, I think, is a little bit of an undersold and an underused character.
So you think that Marvel has been sitting on a gold mine?
I think that a character that inspired Shakespeare and has such a rich history, there might be at least a miniseries in there.
And would you do that miniseries if they asked you? What if your wife wrote it with like a plot from you, and she did the writing, and then you could have an acclaimed writer on the series, and then you drew like a 12-issue or 24-issue limited series of Sprite. 64 issues.
Here's the thing.
That's it.
I think that I think there's enough for at least 5 years. It's a good 60 issues of stories.
You've been thinking about it. That's good.
Yeah, I have lots of ideas. I mean, especially if we're going to talk about how the Eternals are eternal, there's a crazy history and backstory for all those characters.
Yeah, this guy does look a little crazy.
Yeah,
he certainly has humor.
I understand why Marvel decided to give him the book again.
Yeah,
it's huge. It's a gold mine.
Now, he doesn't look like a child hero. He looks like maybe Richie Cunningham from Happy Days, or
I
think a bit of a Justin Bieber haircut happening.
One of the things that's interesting about the characters is just how malleable they can be. And depending on who's working on the books, different aspects of the personalities come out, and those manifest in different visual ways.
If you could have your dream inker on the project, who would you choose?
Yes. Always you.
So you have me inking you on the Sprite Maxi series.
Yes. I think that would be really great.
All right.
I would also like to get you to color it.
Wow. Now here's what I'm thinking.
Tell me.
P. Craig Russell on inks. He's inked you one time, right?
He inked me one time way back in the dawn of my career. I did a Marvel corporate folder, and I believe I had like 120 different characters on it.
Oh, poor you and P. Craig Russell.
Yeah, it was a wraparound cover, and P. Craig Russell inked it, and it was gorgeous. His line is stunning.
Is that the one they made into a T-shirt?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I have that.
It was a full wrap. It was one of the rare full wraparound T-shirts.
So you got pretty lucky early in your career. You got immediately inked by Terry, or Chris Ivey inked the first stuff you did on that series for what was it? That was
Stalkers
Epic line, right?
I believe so. Yeah.
And it was a book that I think Jorge
Tex was drawing it.
What?
Tex was drawing it.
Tex was drawing it. And this was a backup.
Yep.
And I remember Chris Ivey inked you on that. And then immediately you were like, guess what? Terry Austin sounds about right for me.
Yeah, no, my career has been one epic happenstance after another. There's no way I was good enough to do any of the jobs I got hired to do. So
I just remember seeing that first Wonder Man promo stuff, and I heard you were at a New York comic book convention, and I met Rick Leonardi that day, and I met you.
Oh, Rick Leonardi is super cool. He's an amazing artist. Yeah, so I got to do Wonder Man, and with the arrogance of youth, when Fabian asked me who he wanted me to ink over my pencils, I just thought, like, I've always loved Terry Austin.
It's either him or Mark Farmer. Why not?
So, I mean, why not shoot for the moon? And you know, amazingly, Terry was available, and Terry said yes. It's crazy.
So cool. Yeah. Have you ever been inked by Mark Farmer?
I have not.
Oh, that'd be kind of interesting. Cam Smith inked you.
Cam Smith did a great job.
You put up a Supergirl illustration on Twitter and on Facebook that he inked. I was looking at the feathering and the line work. Very interesting, cool approach.
Yeah, there's so much. I'm inking my own book at Image, and it's taking me a very long time. One of the reasons is
those pages.
Yeah, I could put some of them up at some point. Yeah,
well, and I'll put them up.
They're not secret.
It's like a preview, if you will.
Yeah, I'll Facebook some stuff to you. The real issue is that I'm not a very good inker, and so I've been over the last couple of years doing the book. I've really tried to learn to be a better inker, and it's an incredible skill. I think it's an undersold skill, and it's a shame that the industry has changed so much in the last 20 years that production line doesn't work the same way anymore.
Yeah,
I think that an inker, like a good inker, someone who can finish a drawing, not only keeps the book on schedule, it really frees up the penciler to concentrate on different things. Like,
yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Right. I remember I was just thinking about a real popular inker when I was getting into comic books, and while I was early on in my career, he was still inking like crazy. It was Bob Wyacek.
Oh, Bob Wycheck's great. He did some amazing work over Paul Smith.
Yeah, he did. He's worked on John Byrne. He's worked on, I mean, tons and tons.
Bob inked me once.
Cloud, maybe he worked on.
Yeah.
But maybe I don't know. But yeah, Bob Wyacek has glaucoma right now, and there's a GoFundMe for him.
Oh, is there? Okay. Well, can you put that link up?
Yeah, I put it on my Twitter, so you can check that out. And if you're feeling so inclined and you remember his work and you have a soft spot for the guy.
Yeah, he's amazing.
Amazing.
Bob
amazing
Wyacek inked me on some Green Lantern covers.
Pardon?
Bob inked me on some Green Lantern covers I did back in the day.
Of course. Yeah, you had him, and who else? Romeo Tangal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I even have Kevin Nolan inked me on a cover for Green Lantern, but unfortunately it was too saucy to print, and they had me do another cover to replace it, and that one was inked by Terry Austin. So yeah.
I remember the shower cover. You did a shower.
That's the
cover?
one. Yeah. It was Jade in the shower.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Apparently it was too risque.
So I remember when he inked Walt Simonson on Orion. Oh, there must be. We're talking about Bob Wyacek, probably. Yeah.
Yeah.
Bob, that is. Yeah. Yeah. Terry Austin looked good over him. Bob Wyacek was one of those inkers where he'd do a great job, and he wouldn't oversell his own look on a guy. Like people loved Terry Austin because he would put his stamp on it, and it was very appealing. And you always knew when Terry was inking someone. If Scott Williams was inking someone, it looked like Scott Williams was inking that person. He didn't lose the penciler, but you definitely were aware of the inker. Klaus Janson, the same thing. Like it's like, oh my God, like why is this artist look different this time? It's because Klaus is inking him. But Bob Wyacek, Bob would deliver pretty much what you would imagine that artist, the penciler, would do if he was inking himself, if he had the time.
Right.
Jerry Ordway. Here's one. They're saying Tom Palmer is another phenomenal inker. Oh yeah,
Tom Palmer is amazing. My all-time favorite, I have to say, as an inker, even though he was, I thought, one of the greatest pencilers of all time, was Al Williamson. The stuff that he used to do over Ron Garney was amazing. And Al Williams, I just loved his inks. He inked, you mentioned Rick Leonardi earlier. Do you remember Spider-Man 2099?
Yeah.
Great book. Great. I mean, the team of Rick Leonardi and Al Williamson was unbeatable.
Yeah, and also John Romita Jr. on Daredevil.
Oh, yeah.
And then he inked him on that when Frank Miller wrote, it was like a Daredevil year one sort of thing that John Romita Jr. was drawing, and Al was going to town on. That was just around the time when John Romita was really changing up his look. Like he was going, I'm going to get a little bit more blocky, a little bit more stylized, because before he had, when Romita was doing X-Men, it was kind of the last, his first X-Men work. It was kind of the last of his kind of Marvel house style. And then he went in his own direction when he started working back in the Ralph Macchio's office at Marvel. Right. Jeff, I have to say something. This might be the most civil conversation you and I have ever had on Drink and Draw.
Well, I was actually gonna pick a fight with you in a second.
Good. All right. So I've been battling me all day.
Right.
Back and forth. Ben is also busy doing PTA, being a good father.
Ben is incredible.
Ben's quite a man.
Yes. So the fight I was going to pick with you is, this is one of the few places that you and I disagree, is I loved Terry Austin inking John Buscema on Conan covers.
I mean, I certainly liked it. It wasn't my favorite, but Terry Austin is one of my all-time favorite inkers. Mm-hmm. I just think that John Buscema has more of a Hal Foster sort of look, certainly on Conan. But what would have been cool is to see an entire issue of Terry Austin inking, John.
Right. That would have been awesome.
Yeah, because John left depending on how busy he was and how many books he was. Like, I can't even. If I can do a book a month, I'm thrilled. And John Buscema was probably doing like at least 2 books, maybe 3 books a month. Guys like him, guys like Kirby, guys like John Byrne.
Yeah.
Even John Romita Jr. for a while was drawing 2 books a month.
It's true. Well, those guys.
So yeah.
I was just gonna say, going back to that earlier conversation, like the job of the penciler used to be so different. Like, John's job was not to make every line perfect and camera ready and light the shadows and put in texture, even though he did do that. His job was to draw the figure and make it dynamic and make the page exciting and tell the story. And those are just they're 2 different skill sets and they're 2 different mindsets. And I find it very difficult to go back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Hold on. People are asking me to stop talking. Unfortunately, if I stop talking,
no one's asking you to stop talking.
Hold on. There is someone.
Who could that be? Oh,
who would say that?
Who would say that? It's true. Who would say that? All right. So I just sent you a sneak peek of my book that I'm doing that James Robinson has written, and I am penciling and inking.
All right.
It's a epic. James is amazing. The story is super exciting and fun, and it's just taking me forever to draw because I am crazy.
You just sent me real gems. You sent me 2 real gems.
I sent you a page from my upcoming book with James, and then the cleaned up version of Sprite.
Jeez. Sprite. I don't know what it is about Sprite, and when you draw them, you're like the Sprite artist.
I guess it's something about my personality and his personality. I would describe us both as mercurial little
elves,
wayfarers.
Waves.
Mercurial waves.
Wayfarers.com, another sponsor of ours, which is amazing. Like, you would never think a big company like Wayfarer would sponsor Drink and Draw like that, and yet
there you go.
They love us. So I'm gonna.
I would actually like to get Mezcal to sponsor us.
How do you like the Mezcal?
Oh, it's so delish.
Now, on a Johnson watch, I'm allowed Mezcal. I'm just not allowed tequila.
Well, you have actually grown and proved yourself to be more responsible on tequila.
Yeah, I have.
I mean, you've mellowed quite a bit. I remember the last time that you had a lot of tequila, you punched a friend of mine in the stomach, and he actually peed blood for a while.
Yeah, that was quite a night. I think I punched him in the kidneys.
Yeah, you did. You hit him pretty hard. And that's the same night you broke my windshield.
It was quite a night.
Yeah. So
I was so excited about our destination that I was inside the car. And all right, first since this is a Marvel show, let's show the cleaned up Sprite ready for action.
Yeah.
You wouldn't think a whimsical guy like Sprite would be able to, like, the way you drew it, there's a lot of Arabian assassins, and yet and they all had weapons, if I recall.
Yes.
Sprite is armed with only his sense of humor.
Yep.
And tablet number 1 and tablet number 2 of heavy duty aspirin.
Yes. Hang on a second. You wanted to see. He'll be fighting these guys.
I'm not here. Trying to look at some of these comments. Let's see what these guys are talking about. Let's also show. Well, you're going to show us your. Here. Let me get Sprite out of the way. Usually this is Ben's job, and he does it exceptionally.
He's good at everything.
God, the man handles this channel like a pro. All right, so you're going to show us the guys who's going to battle.
I just sent them to you.
Oh, everything's coming up, Danny boy.
Yeah, it is.
I think you already sent me these.
Oh, good. Well, there you go.
You sent it to me last week. Is that it?
That's it.
Yeah. So yeah, Sprite is, I mean, these guys obviously trained professionals at the art of mostly killing, I would imagine.
That is, I think that's an assassin's job.
Yeah, that's their job in life. Sprite's job as an Eternal is to protect the universe. God, that look in his eyes.
He's up for the task. I think he can handle the job.
He does not seem worried. It almost seems like, oh, you guys made a bad error. I was just taking a bath over here. I was just enjoying myself. It's a day off.
An exfoliating steam, if you will.
Yeah, because you know what, guys? You just made a bad choice. Sprite's in town. All right, let's put Sprite aside because I know the viewers get a little excited and antsy when they're seeing too much Sprite.
Yeah, is that what happens?
Yeah, so it happens every single time. This is a page. Now I can't tell at this version if it's a is this the inks or is this the pencils?
That's the pencils.
Okay. Looks like you put some work into this one. It used to be a background artist at Warner Brothers working on, what was the first show, Justice League or Batman?
The first show I did backgrounds on was Justice League Unlimited, and I took over after Dave Johnson, and I sat in his seat, actually. And they didn't even change the name tag. They just left it.
Johnson.
Well,
why? I mean, that's the one thing I've always liked about, not the one thing, but one of the things I've always liked about Warner Brothers is very eco-friendly. And they're like, well, are we really going to swap out a name tag? You know, if their both last name is Johnson.
Right. It's not important.
Yeah. And Human Resources came to you and they asked you if you were okay with that. And you said, fine, of course.
Of course.
These backgrounds are insane.
Is that
a gopher in panel 1?
That is a beaver.
But he looks like he has a monocle, if I'm not mistaken.
So it's a fantasy book, and I decided to make a lot of the characters animal head characters. A lot of camels, they're chimeras, they're mixes, they're magical creatures.
So this doesn't exist. We couldn't actually have something like this in real life.
Why not? Depends on what dimension you live in.
So you in your world, Jeff, like when you dream,
yes,
it's possible that you could be speaking with a space beaver. Maybe now I'm talking about Derek Robertson's book.
Right, Space Beaver is a great book. No, when I dream, I tend to talk to anything. It doesn't have to even be an animal.
Yeah, it doesn't even have to be an animal at all.
But this is a show about covers.
Oh,
we should talk about covers.
We're gonna show some covers today. Jeff's idea was, since we are talking about covers, we're going to talk about cover process, and I'm going to finish working on.
Yeah, you should show them your new new cover you came up for your Turtles cover.
Drawing here. There we go.
Look at that, bananas.
I got a little bit more work. I got to fill in these areas over here, and what I did was I came in. This is a little trick. Is I inked it normally, but I came in with an electric eraser to dim this down a little bit here.
So what was your inspiration for that cover, the Joan of Arc?
It's Joan of Arc. I just thought like Athena. This is a character for the Eternals. I thought Athena she has armor, so I thought, what kind of famous time zone could she still have armor? And I was thinking, like, who are heroes, female heroes that wore armor? And there's not a whole lot that come to mind. So Joan of Arc is certainly a role model.
Absolutely, and I love so I noticed that you have basically a circle.
Well, I was inspired by Joe's work there, because Joe did some of those amazing Alphonse Mucha inspired designs for his, and I'm like, that is such a underrated, cool concept to do that.
Yeah, but I've noticed a lot of, if you wanted to show some of your other covers, I noticed that you tend to have a very strong sense of balanced design when you do a cover. Do you try and figure out what the design is before the image, or do you try and match the image into a design?
You know what? Here, well, like you said, we'll bring some of the covers out. So before, when I was drawing, I was mostly inking other people. I was always, Marvel would give me little things here and there because the editors were always nice that way. They're if you work for them and you have a desire, I had a desire to be a penciler, and they would still give me little like penciling and inking assignments, but I'm not ready for prime time, as they say. So when I stepped out of comics, my dad passed away, and I spent about 10 years just doing advertising. When I got back, it was because Dave Johnson kind of inspired me, and I looked at his career and I was like, wow, he was very popular for doing Red Sun and a bunch of other comics. I had even inked backgrounds for Bill Ray on some of the comics he had drawn. And so when he said, oh, you should be drawing comics, it inspired me. And I looked at his career, and at that point, David transitioned mostly into a cover artist.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, man, I'm gonna, that's a great way to get your name back into the mix. So I wanted to concentrate on that. So I did, the first kind of cover I did was Red Sonja. And this one took me forever to draw.
I remember that one.
I mean, I couldn't get the perspective right. I must have spent like 2 weeks on this thing. And this was from maybe 2006 or 8 or something like that.
Right.
And I think even Ron Garney took a stab at like kind of doing a draw over and going, maybe you should try this or that. And I tried that. And then I didn't like how that looked. I was going for, Ron's stuff. It started to look like Ron Garney, which is, amazing, but it didn't look like I drew it. So then I went back at it again. And, now I look at things, I don't like this hand over here, but for me, it was a big breakthrough. But I had spent so long doing this cover that when I got more cover assignments, I couldn't put the same amount of time into that and make a living. It wouldn't make sense. So I remember Mark Chiarello had emailed me going, hey, if you can kind of keep this up, we can have some work for you at DC doing covers. But then he saw my next couple of covers, and I don't think he was as impressed. And it took a few years later before I started doing covers at DC. But getting encouragement like that certainly inspired me to keep going. So I started doing covers for Boom Comics, and this is one for Mark Waid's book Irredeemable that Peter Krause was drawing. Peter Krause just came out with an awesome crowdfunded comic that I did another cover for. Super cool guy. And this one looks a lot like my friend Koji. So, do you know Koji?
I do.
Yeah. I just wanted to, you can, I don't know, I don't draw like Dave Johnson, but I think you can see the iconic kind of graphic inspiration that that Dave kind of inspired. Here's what Joe's saying. It's true. But yeah, I was like, let's make these, let's go beyond the, one hero punching the other hero sort of standard that comics are. And Dave was kind of moving away from that. Now you see with comic book covers, they look like movie posters when they're done great. So I also love typography. So I wanted to incorporate a lot of typography into it in the way that like Walt Simonson used to do. So this was kind of a breakthrough for me. And I was kind of like painting with this. I think I must have used Art Rage or maybe the smudge tool in Photoshop to try to achieve a painterly look for it.
I mean, it's a cover that really grabs your attention. I mean, it's the colors are great. So at this point, you've been doing a lot of coloring stuff for advertising, right? But not much.
Yeah, I learned how to color for advertising. I usually use the guy Pat Martin, who was coloring a lot of covers at DC Comics, and he was a friend of mine from Rob's company, Extreme Studios. That's how I met him. And so he would color things, and I found myself always like going, well, can we do this? Can we do that? And finally he was just like, Dan, you could actually do this yourself. So I
Awesome.
man, I'm gonna have to force myself to do it. This one, I don't know. This one, I was thinking like kind of like if there was a magazine cover for Harley Quinn, like if there was a, what, I did this years and years ago, but it has kind of like a Billie Eilish sort of look to it.
Mm.
Now, I'm not talking about the hyenas either, Jeff, so don't go there.
I won't. What I like about that one is that you still, so when you, are you breaking down your cover lines, your eye lines with the rule of thirds? Are you putting the important aspects of the cover on those points?
I wish I could say I was like you were explaining, and I know Dave does it, and I know Joe is very
Because
good.
that one clearly does it. Her eyes and her eye line with the hyenas, they're 100% on that cross line.
You know what? My dad used to cut out. My dad was a design guy. He was kind of like if you ever saw that show Mad Men, he was like one of the guys in the art department, and ultimately he made it to like art director. And then he had his own small advertising agency, but he wouldn't actually teach me drawing, but he would teach me design. And he would cut out these little shapes like rectangles, squares, triangles, circles. And then he would tell me to compose them on a page, and he would say, use negative space, use this and that. So I think that kind of helped, but I really am envious of artists that sit there and they'll design like a triangle on purpose, and
Right.
they're intelligently going about it. I think I'm doing it more on instincts, and those instincts haven't been properly trained. But I guess it's kind of schooling. My dad certainly knew what he was doing.
I was going to say that if you're doing it subconsciously, that's better than trying to figure out the math every time. That's just a more intuitive understanding of it.
Maybe. I think probably a perfect marriage of both would be good. This is
Right.
also kind of inspired, and I know you love this stuff too. You and I are both big fans of those late 80s comics from Marvel. And
Yes.
they would play with the logo, and for whatever reason, it's very hard to get your editor into changing that logo, because you are changing the branding to some degree. So this is not the logo. The logo on Ghosted was actually straight across. Before I did this book, Matteo Scalera was doing the covers and killing it on that. So it's a tough act to follow. But I asked Skybound if I could play with this stuff, and they're just super cool about it. So mostly when I was doing Ghosted covers, they let me move the letters around. And one time I had a bunch of tarot cards thrown up in the air with all the letters and the iconography on the letters. And I mean, they would let me do all sorts of crazy things.
Cool.
And I miss doing covers like this. It's definitely more experimental, and I don't know how well they're received from a fan perspective, but I enjoyed it.
Well, I think that anytime a cover can shock you or be unexpected, I think that's a great selling point for the cover. That's its job, is to get you to pick the book up and then hopefully look inside.
Yeah, like this one's definitely, you're like, wait a second, people are getting married. It's a happy thing. Is that blood coming out of this cake? And it's just a weird cover. This is another one. This is from a while back.
I love that one. Yeah.
I really wish I hadn't done this cover then, and I wish I could do it now, like redo it, because I just love the idea. These guys are both, they're super smart masterminds, and I'm like, both of them have blueprints for how they're going to achieve their agendas. So again, companies like Boom, companies like Skybound let me do crazy things. Like I got to write the cover copy. He's got like Knowing Smirk, model number 24.8, hyposubdermic needle, like all these weird things. I have cat coffee over here. You remember they were doing the cat coffee, Jeff?
Yes, the cat coffee that came out of the cat's rectum. Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, but it was super expensive.
It was remarkably popular.
I don't know if anybody's drinking that coffee anymore.
Well, no one's wearing leg warmers anymore either. Styles change.
True. Here's an example of DC letting me play with the logo a little bit, and I have George Jetson literally working on the logo inside a chip of some kind sitting on a space saucer.
Mm.
So that was fun. And I hand lettered the logo. So I didn't even put the actual, I guess I could have requested the graphics for the file and just superimposed it, but I hand lettered the thing.
I like that too. So it seems to me that your coloring choices are pretty straightforward. Like, not straightforward, but you don't, if it's going to be, there seems to be a mood to your colors. Like if it's going to be reds or blues, or if you're hots or colds, do you plan that stuff while you're drawing ahead of time?
So sometimes I do. I'd say about 20–30% of the time I do, but a lot of times I look at the drawing after I've finished it and I take another approach. On this Eternals cover here, I know exactly how I'm going to do it.
You already have a color. You have a color plan.
Yeah, because we've spent so many weeks. Like this is unusual that usually I'll do a cover and I'll do it in like one day.
Oh yeah.
But this time I have a lot of time. In this case, I'll play with the colors. I'll make the background a different color. I'll do these different things. But he pops nicely against this. I wanted you still to be able to read the logo, have that pop enough from the background so it doesn't fade away and you don't know what you're buying. I mean,
right.
Again, guys like Dave Johnson do this expertly without thinking. Like Dave has a color formula that's just insane. It's great.
It's very upsetting because I am much more of I need to understand the math of the drawing since I'm not as emotionally sensitive or artistically like I don't have the kind of planning that Dave does in his mind. I need to do the math more. So it's very frustrating when he just tells me he just feels it. I just feel it.
Yes, no, exactly. Well, I don't know if Dave, maybe Dave doesn't want to share.
He doesn't want to share his secrets.
His secrets. He's like, if I get it out, somebody will take my job.
Right.
This one's for this is Gail Simone, Jim Zub, and myself, and then colored inside is Dave Stewart, and I drew the interiors, and it's kind of a dream come true to draw Conan and Red Sonja in a miniseries.
Yeah, that's a nice one.
But yeah, this was a really fun cover, and I did kind of a Kirby thing on Red Sonja's eyes, which Kirby would do, and it's like it's a little bit of a trick if you can pull it off properly. It's really something.
What's the trick? What's the Kirby thing?
The Kirby trick sometimes to show, because we're working with, let's see if I can get this thing to focus my camera here. The Kirby trick is he would take the sorry, I'm gonna there. Let's see if that works. Nope, it doesn't do anything. Let's see. Nope. He would have one eye going in one direction and one going in another direction, and it kind of shows like almost a little bit of movement. So
that's interesting.
Yeah, and if you look at some, like he did it a lot on Fantastic Four, which is neat. So I tried it here, and it really works. So she's looking down with this eye, and kind of like at you with that eye. So almost like something's happening, and we caught the whole thing in mid action. Conan is obviously just looking straight at some person that he's going to behead. Here's another DC one. Trying to get kind of painterly in the background here.
Like that.
This is a Amanda Connor, Jimmy Palmiotti, Timms and Sinclair book. But yeah, this, if you could see this, that Green Lantern, I was like, who's my favorite Green Lantern artist? And it's Gil Kane. So that's kind of a Gil Kane, for me, inspired figure, I guess.
Sure.
And then this one is for Wonder Woman 84, and it's supposed to be Gal Gadot. I don't know how good I did on that. Maybe I was a little intimidated, but
it's hard to catch a likeness from, while drawing a character that's not photo, like that doesn't look stiff.
Yeah, that's what I don't know. Brett Blevins did the inside of this book. So you have an artist who's one of the very best artists at drawing women is Brett Blevins.
Yes, he's amazing.
And Brett is super, super fluid. Like his characters they're always moving, they're always flowing. So compared to Brett's like super flowy awesomeness, this is a little bit too stiff. But hey, I'm doing my best.
Right.
And here's me trying to be all artsy on my own project.
I know that you went back and forth trying to decide what sort of cover treatment you're going to do for Slots. And I know that it's a constant debate, but I really like the bold move of having the heavy black and then the 1/3 art. I think that sets it apart from on the stage.
You know what? I didn't necessarily look at this for like I never bought rubber bullets, rubber blankets. No, rubber blankets is Dave Mazzucchelli. But I think it was rubber
stray bullets.
Stray bullets. And Stray Bullets did something like this, or at least this is how I imagined it looked. And I always thought when Stray Bullets came out years and years ago, I just remember the covers being unlike anything I'd ever seen. It seemed like an elevated sort of look. And Slots is a gritty downtown Las Vegas story about grifters and losers and gamblers. And so I was like, how can I elevate this and try to make it look artsy, and I decided on this. And again, this is for Skybound, and they since I was writing and drawing the book, they let me design the logo, which is fun. I loved all the books that I work on. I designed the logos, like the latest one from Boom. I designed the logo for that as well. So it's a lot of fun. I enjoy that process.
Do you think that your years in advertising allow you to approach comic covers differently than say someone who's just been doing comics their whole career?
No, I think it's I keep saying this, and Dave's going to go. I think Dan's falling in love with me, but I think like being friends with Dave and watching Dave Johnson's process, and he kind of with his 100 Bullets covers and a lot of the covers he was doing does and still does especially when they let Dave just kind of go and do what he wants to. It kind of opened my eyes to like, well, anything's possible. So how can you really graphically show something? And, like you, we're both like influenced by, famous artists that aren't comic book artists like McGinnis and like there's other influences.
Rockwell was and still is. I remember early on when I was working on the Fantastic Four, not only was I looking at other great Fantastic Four artists like Kirby, but I was looking at a ton of Rockwell at the time. I remember I wanted to make my run on Fantastic Four not only exciting and fun and comic book, but I wanted to get some of that casual realism from Rockwell to make all the background characters seem almost ordinary, but still have character to really offset the superhero-ness of what was going on.
Well, what I always liked about what you do, Jeff, is there's a real human quality to your work. Like when people are talking and interacting, like they're feeling things. Sometimes I notice you don't follow the script and they're feeling the wrong things. But no, I'm kidding. But no, but they always look like they're feeling something, and you're like, oh, that person's really talking to them. Like, I'm looking serious, or I'm angry, or I'm screaming, or I'm feeling sad. And they're just stock looks, no matter who they are. And like, if it's an old person or a young person, they might just put a few bags, but this head structure is the same. The nose is the same. The eyes are the same. They never deviate. And we meet people and they're all different shapes and sizes, and, talk about an age of diversity now in comic books, and finally comic books catching up to, the rest of the mindset of, humanity. We're all different people, and you've always been great at drawing a diverse like selection of the population, and you managed to also bring this human quality that you'd rarely see in comics.
I think thanks, man. That's very nice to say. I think one of the things that made that possible is that I've always had a studio with other artists, and a lot of times, and their friends and the other artists are often good actors, or they have other interests. So if you get a fellow comic book artist who understands, like I would just give, you'd pose for a lot of these pictures too. I would give the motivation, like, oh, you're really excited about this scene, or this terrifies you. And luckily having a bunch of hams for friends, you get you get great expressions.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun posing for some of that X-Men stuff that I would later go on to ink.
Right?
Yeah.
It's funny just how when you're a kid and you're looking at a comic, I remember for a long time being young, just not understanding the process of drawing, like of a person sitting down and drawing a page, right? Like, it's a job, that someone is doing that work, but how that work is accomplished and the steps that are involved, like you just don't really get it until you start doing it yourself. And you find it's a very silly process.
Was it a big change for you to work in a studio where you had other artists? Because you'd probably always drawn comics, by yourself in your little room, mostly crying, as I recall, right?
Well, the crying that hasn't stopped. I mean, that's
so you still cried in the studio with your friends, and they just like look over and they go, "Jeff's crying again."
Most of them, I mean, everyone just doesn't mention it,
I mentioned it, and I apologize.
Right. Most people just let me do it in the corner and don't call attention to it. But I've actually been working with friends since the beginning. Steve Jones and I, one of our first jobs in high school was a weekly adventure newspaper strip that we did together. I penciled it, we wrote it, and he inked it. And so ever since I was a kid, I've always had other people in the studio. So drawing is, for me, not as much a solitary endeavor as it is for other people.
Well, that's kind of nice.
I love being in the studio.
Yeah, I remember you guys were that's one of the first studios I ever was. You guys were nice enough to always, every time I'd visit you, and you'd go, "Come on," and we could work in the studio, and it was just a great environment. And I was learned things from Chris Shank and Brandon McKinney, you and Steve Jones, and it opened my eyes to, like, wow, there's different ways to do this. There's different ways to ink, and it was always very solitary for me.
Yeah, well, I mean, that was one of the nice things about working at Warner Brothers and Hasbro on Transformers. I loved being in the studio. I know some guys don't thrive well in that kind of structure, but it actually really helps me a lot to have other people around and someone cracking the whip. It's so much better for me. I'm easily distracted.
What about now? So now you've moved. You and your wife have this awesome place, and you practically run a zoo over there with all the animals.
It's true.
It's just,
naturally.
Yeah, it's just you drawing. So how has that changed? And
I drink a lot more.
So this show's perfect for you.
Exactly. No, I have to say it's a hard transition. I spent a lot of time on the phone talking to you fools, and we've been Skyping a lot more. But the last few years, one of the things that's been really upsetting about the shutdown and the pandemic is, in the last couple of years, I've been going to a lot of comic book conventions. So you get to see
we're side by side at all these things.
So I really miss going to shows.
Hold on a second, Jeff. Here's what I'd like you to do. I'm going to use the electric eraser, but I'm not going to force the viewers to listen to that. So while I'm going to put myself on mute, while I'm doing that, if you could just compliment what I'm doing.
Okay. All right. Fantastic point.
Maybe tell the story of how you even met Brandon McKinney, Chris Shank, Derek. I think Derek was a part of the studio, and Steve Jones you'd known since high school.
I could tell that story. It's not really not much to it. All right, so Dan is making off-screen noises. I think that every artist should try working in a studio. It's good for you. It teaches you different skills. You get to see different people doing different kinds of work. And one of the things I loved about Drink and Draw is that we would get to see each other's thought processes and get to see like a different approach to things. And it's really helpful, especially if you didn't get a chance to go to art school like neither Dan nor I did. You are hungry for information and an education to see other artists make work. And Drink and Draw is great for that. I watched Dave draw, Dan draw, and we had Steve Rude come in Jim Food was his approach to drawing is completely different from my own. So I think the drink and draw experience, apart from leading to some ridiculous covers at the moment, has been really educational. And anyone who has a chance to go to drink and draw when it comes back should do that. And Dan's back.
I'm back.
Yeah.
So clearly it needs a little bit more erasing here and there to kind of, so I guess now we always think about the resale and everything. So you want it, if it's hanging on someone's wall, to look proper and congruent.
So how does that, when you're going to scan that in, right?
Yeah.
How does that partially erased black scan? Does it reprint well? Does it?
Well, years ago, when you started coloring, you would just be doing, you would switch it into bitmap, which takes whatever lines you have and just puts it into almost like if Minecraft was like blown up. Like,
you know what? I'm actually gonna I want you to tell me the process again. I'm just gonna take some notes. All right. So when you're scanning your page, let's pretend I don't know how to do any of this, and I've got a comic book page that I have hand penciled and inked, and I'm going to scan it in. What is the process? What do I do? So
you scan it in as high as your scanner can scan it, because you're going to get as much detail as possible. Like 1200 DPI is going to be a little bit too much.
Mine only goes to 600. Is that cool?
600 is fantastic, because typically you're drawing these pages at 11 by 17 and they're shrinking down to around 7 by 10.
Okay.
So scanning them in at that high of a DPI, dots per inch, is fantastic, because you're going to reduce it down when you send that file into get colored or back to Marvel or back to DC or back to whatever publisher you're working with. It's typically going to be at print size, which means that 600 is going to be compressed now even smaller into about a 7 by 10 ratio. And then there's two schools of thought. Like like if you pick up this great book that DC Comics came out with, they kind of walk you through the process, and then you would bitmap it. So you'd scan it in at grayscale, and then you'd bitmap it after you brought the levels up. And then all
right, so you would scan it in, adjust your levels to make sure your blacks were as black as you wanted.
The blacks to be nice and dark, and the lights to be light. You touch up any little things that you don't like in there, and then you convert it to bitmap, and then back to grayscale. And so all of a sudden you have why grayscale again?
Yeah, why bitmap and then gray if you're going to go back to grayscale?
Well, bitmap will take out any grays or any inconsistencies. So every single line, when you convert it back again to grayscale, will be recognizable. So if a colorist wants to go in and do, say, a color hold on it, like change the background entirely to a color, it's very easy for them. They just but for me, like when I'm doing this, and for all my work, I'll leave it in grayscale. I'll never bitmap it, and I'll use this as a multiply layer, and I'll color the whole thing in layers instead of channels.
Okay.
And that way, this sort of stuff that seems gray versus like this jet black over here, the jet black will be black, but color will actually seep through that and change that color, and it'll recede quite a bit. So I'll have more of a three-dimensional quality to it.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah.
And when you're coloring, are you coloring in RGB or CYMK?
I'm always coloring CYMK, because that way if in Photoshop or whatever you're coloring, typically there'll be like an exclamation point if you've used a color that can only appear on the web and can't be printed. And so if it can't be printed, then the printer, whoever's printing that comic book, has to do a close approximation to that, and typically it'll get muddy. And so that vibrance that you were going for, that you saw on your computer screen, is going to be completely lost.
Gotcha. All right.
Jeff, this is a very technical drink and draw.
Well, that's the mezcal.
Is that what it is? Because if Dave was doling out this information, we'd just hear like maybe a grunt. He'd probably, like if we were in his proximity, probably try to slap us or something.
Yeah, no, Dave will bite, and Dave has sharp fingernails. So if you ask him questions, it'll cost you.
Have you ever watched him file his fingernails?
I've watched him grind them on the concrete.
Yeah, very weird. Like
Yeah,
I saw that happen, I was like, okay, I guess we're
he's
close.
ready. He's always ready for battle.
Yeah, he's always like ready to scratch somebody. So it's like, you know.
It's true. Well, Dan, we've gone an hour, and I think we've covered some good ground.
You think we have?
I do. I do think we have.
All right. Well, that's important, right?
Yeah. I appreciate you sharing your secrets with me and the internet.
I've finished this cover as a result.
Damn.
The only thing I was planning on doing, and I'll ask your advice, is whoops, there we go. Do you see that like little ledge behind her? I was thinking of
Yes.
making like this area here, whoops, here, like a black to kind of balance the whole page out.
I would either make it black to bring the eye down to that heavy black, or if you feel like doing more ornate grill work, maybe some more of that.
So put even more little lines on this cover that already has a gazillion lines.
Yeah, I don't think you can always fit more lines in per inch, right? Especially if you're going to scan it at 600 DPI.
Yeah, this has a lot of lines on it. I would have with liney.
Yeah, the more lines, the better. That's what I've always been told.
Yeah. Look at that, Jeff. They have your number.
Jeff trying to bail on us again. We're just trying to keep it short, sweet, entertaining for everybody.
You don't want to bore people to death. Like when Joe's on here and he's rambling on and on.
Joe's actually a really great interviewer. You should check his show out.
Yeah, definitely check his show out. I'm always jealous of the people. Every now and then he'll go, all right, I got this person on my show. I'm gonna bring them over to Drink and Draw. It's like you took them out on town. They got to see the bright lights in the big city, and then they go, you know, I know this one place. It's off the beaten track. It's called the Drink and Draw Social Club.
Right.
And he goes, well, you know what? We could end the night here. And sometimes they're foolish enough to make the journey.
Yeah, suckers, all of them.
Exactly. Well, Jeff, I appreciate. Let's see, what's this? A tooth grill.
That's a good suggestion.
Yeah, I should.
Right.
I appreciate you letting me ramble on about the covers. It made me feel like there's actually some rhyme and reason to what I do. So next time
We've done, over 100 of them now, right?
I've done 99 covers.
99. Yeah, no, that's impressive. So
I don't know. There's probably well over 100 at this point. Yeah. But next time maybe we can go into we can take. This is Joe's idea. We can take like a script and that you've already worked on in the comic book, and maybe we can break it down into like how you approached it and why you made the choices you did.
That would be great. That'd be fun.
You do that for I know you don't like the fans, you have a hatred for them, but you would do that for them.
I would go that far.
Interesting.
Yeah. Well, my friend, it's time for me to get another drink.
All right. Yeah. We'll keep this up. We're going to go. You guys can keep drinking. Thanks for hanging out with just Jeff and I instead of those, handsome Ben, dastardly Dave, and jovial Joe.
Right. I mean, if Ben's a 10, we're going to give him a 10, maybe 9.5.
You know what? Ben's a good-looking guy. Like a lot of times, if you see me like not talking, I'm staring at Ben on the show.
His eyes are dreamy. So, but I would say that you and I are good, solid 4s and 5s.
Easily, I give us that. I don't want to brag, but I think we're a 4 and a 5. I don't know if you're a 4 and I'm a 5, but yeah,
it's really not for us to decide.
No, it's a viewer thing.
Yeah, agreed. On that note, I think we should go.
Yeah, on that note, that's a high point. We'll never get better than that, Jeff.
Nope. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Cheers, everyone. Toodles.